Is it undemocratic to form a governing coalition after an election has produced a hung legislature? That's what we'll be discussing in today's episode of the Naylor Review podcast. Many people believe that it is perfectly democratic that in a situation where a hung parliament has been produced by a general election, that a coalition government forming an absolute majority of that parliament be formed, and that government with different parties in it actually gets to have a say in how the country is run. The most recent example of this form of formal coalition government in the United Kingdom was the 2010 general election aftermath. After the election, the Conservative Party under David Cameron, which won 36.1% of the vote, formed a coalition, a governing coalition, with Nick Clegg's Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats in 2010 won 23% of the vote. And together they managed to form a coalition government in the House of Commons with 363 members of Parliament. A very recent example in Europe was the 2025 German federal election, in which the Union, which is made up of the Christian Democratic Union and the Christian Social Union, got 28.5% of the vote, and the Social Democratic Party of Germany, the SPD, won 16.4% of the vote. And together they formed a governing coalition in the Bundestag. I don't think that these two governments, which I've just discussed, the Cameron-Clegg government and the CDU-CSU-SPD government, currently running Germany, were actually democratic, or to put it in a better language, they didn't have proper mandates. Now this is because, and I'll take the UK situation, the 2010 situation. No one voted for Conservative Lib Dem coalition. There wasn't that option on the ballot paper. It may be that if you combine votes for Tory candidates and votes for Lib Dem candidates, you get 58.1% of votes. 59.1% of votes. But it isn't the case, or it wasn't the case, that 59.1% of voters voted for that government. That government, the prospect of a Conservative Liberal Democrat government, got 0% of the vote. It didn't even get votes from its members of Parliament or its two leaders. No one voted for the Conservative Liberal Democrat government. That was formed by David Cameron and Nick Clegg after the 2010 election. And this isn't about the merits of that government or what that government did or the personal merits of now Lord Cameron and Nick Clegg. It's simply about the fact that no one ever voted or even got a chance to vote for a Conservative Liberal Democrat government. So I don't think that these post-election coalitions are actually democratic. Post-election coalitions are actually democratic. I think that they have zero mandate. They have zero support from the people. They cannot claim to be the most appropriate government for the nation because no one voted for them. Not even their own leaders voted for them. David Cameron wanted a majority in 2010. He didn't get it, but that's what he wanted. And he then decided to, instead of just running a minority government which got 36.1% of the vote, he decided to lead a majority a coalition which got 0% of the vote. No one voted for a government which included both David Cameron and Nick Clegg. So, what alternative do I suggest for elections which do produce situations where there isn't a party with a clear majority? Do I think that there should be a second round of the election? No, certainly not, because I believe that you should never tell voters that they voted for the wrong choice, which was for the wrong option, which was a major flaw of the second referendum campaign during the whole Brexit situation in the late 2010s. What I think should be done is that, say 2010, clearly David Cameron should have been Prime Minister. That is unquestionably true. He was the leader of the largest party in the House of Commons. Gordon Brown's Labour had been defeated in the election. They were unpopular. Everything said, by every possible metric, by every possible metric which is seen as appropriate in a representative democracy, by every possible metric, David Cameron should have been Prime Minister. And thankfully he was. Thankfully he was invited by Her late Majesty to form a government. But he should have said, no, look, this is going to be a Conservative minority government, a minority Conservative government, and yes, we will potentially work with the Liberal Democrats on every single vote, what I call an informal, sort of unofficial coalition. But at least it has a mandate. At least you have a cabinet which has a mandate. And now you may be asking, well, we're not in 2010 anymore, we're not even in that decade, we're not even under a Conservative government anymore. David Cameron isn't in government, Nick Clegg isn't in Parliament. But it is relevant, because we're coming up to the next general election in possibly less than 3 years. And a very recent poll on the 19th of August by Find Out Now suggested that if the election was held reasonably soon, let's say, the Conservative Party would win around 18% of the vote, and Reform UK would win 23% of the vote, leading to a combined vote share of about 41%, which is an absolutely massive number under a first-past-the-post system. So it very much looks like the next government could be a right-wing government. but I am worried about it. Because I do think that we could get into a situation where Reform UK or the Conservative Party, could be either one, because first past the post is unpredictable if we're dealing with very, very marginal situations in certain constituencies. Either one, and then they'll form a coalition with whichever party in that pair came second. A formal, official coalition, just like in 2010. And you can understand it, because it would be to stop a potential left-wing government. But I am worried because that government would not have a mandate, as I have already explained. It would have zero mandate. Let's say the Find Out Now poll was replicated exactly in the next general election. Nigel Farage, if he decided to form a coalition with Kemi Badenoch's Conservatives, he would be effectively saying, yes, I'm going to throw away a Reform UK minority government which got 23% of the vote for a coalition government with the Conservatives which got 0% of the vote, if current trends continue. And that is where I want this episode to lead. What are we going to do on the British right? My dream scenario would be that Reform UK and Restore Britain decide that it would be best, and it is best, it would be best to just merge back into the Conservative Party completely. I would like the Conservatives to come up with the title of Deputy Leader. I don't think we actually have that title right now, but I would like the Conservatives to come up with, to establish a deputy leadership position, and I would like to see Nigel Farage as Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, and I think he'd be a very good shadow First Secretary of State, opposing Louise Haigh. And then, if we actually did that, you'd go to the voters with a unified Conservative Party, and that party would get probably around 35 to 41% of the votes, and probably a majority of seats. And you'd have a very, very legitimate government with a proper mandate. But it very likely isn't going to be that way. It's very, very unlikely that Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe are just going to decide that they should give up on their political projects and become subordinate members of the Conservative Party. What we could see is an electoral pact. Now, there are reasons to be nervous about an electoral pact, but at least if an electoral pact went into an election already formed, or at least already formed by election day, maybe not within the campaign, but by election day, and everyone who was keeping an eye on politics would know that Reform, Conservatives, and maybe Restore Britain were in one electoral pact, running on one national campaign. And perhaps those 2 or 3 parties combined got 35 to 41% of the vote, and got a very large amount of seats, a majority of seats. That's what we would probably get. That would also be a legitimate government, because it would be a coalition, but I'm not against coalitions in general. What I'm against is formal coalitions which bring a party into government, which, by the way, wasn't what Theresa May did in 2017. What I'm talking about is a 2010 style scenario where parties which did not come first independent national campaigns, which did not come first, are brought into government. Those, I think, are undemocratic, because you basically say Group X got the largest amount of seats, got the largest amount of votes, has the strongest claim to form the government, but now we're going to form Group Y, which got none of those things, but is a convenient arrangement between politicians of various groups. So, my advice for anyone in control of this is that if Conservatives and Reform, and perhaps Restore, are to unite, it should not be after the election. It should be ideally before the election campaign even gets started. If we're genuinely willing to do that, we shouldn't wait. We should get that done soon, so that both Reform and the Conservatives, and again, maybe Restore, would actually have a mandate in a post-Burnham government. We could also have a situation where we didn't run on a pact, but together we do make up the majority of seats, but we decide not to form a formal coalition, we decide to form an informal alliance. I would also be very much in favour of that. So those are my thoughts on coalitions formed after general elections, which do not provide one party with a solid parliamentary majority. Thank you for listening.